Jake Miller was wiping grease off his hands with an old rag when the bay doors of his repair station exploded inward. The sound was deafening, like a freight train crashing through a wall of tin cans. Metal screamed against metal, and Jake stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his toolbox as a massive starship tore through the reinforced entrance. Sparks flew everywhere, showering down like deadly fireworks. The ship scraped across the floor with an ear-splitting shriek before finally grinding to a halt just feet from where Jake stood. His heart hammered in his chest. In 15 years of working this orbital station, he'd seen plenty of rough landings, but nothing like this. The ship was huge, sleek, and covered in what looked like organic plating. It didn't look damaged exactly, more like whoever was piloting it didn't care about making a gentle entrance. The loading ramp dropped with a hydraulic hiss, and what emerged made Jake's breath catch in his throat. A dragon. Not like the fairy tales from Earth with wings and fire breath, but close enough that Jake's brain immediately screamed the word. The creature stood nearly 12 feet tall on powerful legs that looked like they could crush steel. Its scales shimmered with purple and blue light that seemed to pulse from within, like someone had trapped the night sky under armor plating. The head was massive, angular, with intelligent eyes that burned with an emotion Jake recognized immediately. Desperation. "You are Jake Miller, the mechanic?" The dragon's voice rumbled through the bay like distant thunder, deep and resonant enough that Jake felt it vibrate in his chest. Jake's mouth had gone dry. He swallowed hard. "Yeah, that's me." "What the hell is?" The dragon moved aside and Jake's words died in his throat. On a hover platform behind the massive creature lay another dragon. This one was smaller, more elegant, with scales that should have been beautiful but were flickering weakly like dying stars struggling to shine. What made Jake's stomach turn were the strange crystalline growths spreading across her body, crawling slowly up from her chest like ice forming on a window. The crystals were dark, almost black, and they pulsed with a sickly light. "My mate Serena. She is dying." The dragon's voice cracked with raw emotion that hit Jake like a punch to the gut. "I am Dravik of the Draconith. Our healers have failed. Every treatment, every medicine, every prayer. Nothing works. You are her last hope." Jake stared in complete disbelief. The Draconith were legendary across the galaxy. Everyone knew about them, even humans who'd only been exploring space for a couple hundred years. They were ancient, powerful, and proud as hell. Their technology was so advanced it might as well be magic. They had healers who could supposedly cure anything, warriors who'd never lost a battle, and a reputation for never, ever asking other species for help. Especially not humans, who most advanced races treated like the new kids who just showed up to school. "Why me?" Jake asked, finding his voice again. "I mean, no offense, but you guys have technology that makes ours look like stone tools. We're still figuring out basic quantum drives while you're doing things we don't even have words for." Dravik's scales dimmed, losing some of their inner light. The big dragon looked tired, Jake realized. Exhausted in a way that went beyond physical. "Because you think differently than any species I have encountered," Dravik said quietly. 3 years ago, I was on this station for diplomatic reasons. I watched you repair a biocore engine that every expert from 5 different species declared permanently dead. They said it was too complex, too damaged, too integrated to separate the failed components. Jake remembered that job. It had taken him 4 days and he barely slept. "You did not see a sophisticated system," Dravik continued. "You saw individual broken parts. You found each failure point and fixed them one by one. Our healers cannot save Serena because they see only the whole organism. They try to fix everything at once to restore complete balance. But I watched you work, human. You think like no one else. You break impossible problems into small possible pieces." Jake approached the dying dragon carefully, his mechanic's instincts taking over despite his racing heart. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. Those crystal growths were definitely spreading, he could see them creeping slowly across her scales in real time. He'd seen cascade failures before in hybrid systems where one broken component overloaded the next in a chain reaction. But never in a living being. Never in something that could feel pain. "What exactly is killing her?" Jake asked, his voice steady now, falling into the calm focus he always felt when facing a problem. "Cascade crystallization," Dravik said, the words heavy with hopelessness. "Her internal energy matrix is collapsing. Each node fails and overloads the next. Our healers say that in 72 hours, maybe less, she will become stone. Permanent. Irreversible. She will still be alive inside, but trapped forever, unable to move or speak or even die." The horror of that fate hit Jake like cold water. He looked at the impossible patient before him, then up at Dravik's desperate eyes. Every logical instinct in his brain screamed that this was beyond him. Way beyond him. He was a mechanic who fixed ships and engines and equipment. He wasn't a doctor. He'd never studied alien biology. He had no idea how dragon anatomy even worked. But looking at Serina's flickering scales and Dravik's broken expression, Jake knew something else with absolute certainty. He'd never walked away from someone who needed help. Not ever. That wasn't who he was, and it wasn't who humans were. "All right," Jake said, rolling up his sleeves and grabbing his diagnostic scanner. "Let's see what we're working with." Jake spent 6 straight hours scanning Serina with every piece of diagnostic equipment he could find in his workshop. He pulled out scanners designed for ships, medical equipment borrowed from the station's clinic, and even some experimental gear he'd been tinkering with in his spare time. Coffee cups piled up on his workbench. His eyes burned from staring at holographic displays. But he couldn't stop. Every scan revealed something new, something fascinating, and something absolutely terrifying. Dravik stood nearby the entire time, silent as a statue, watching every move Jake made. The big dragon hadn't left his mate's side except to give Jake room to work. Every few minutes, Dravik would reach out and gently touch Serina's scales, as if checking to make sure she was still there. "Okay, I need you to explain something to me," Jake said finally, pulling up a 3-dimensional model of Serina's internal structure. "Because what I'm seeing here doesn't make any sense with what I know about biology." Dravik moved closer, his massive head leaning in to study the display. "What do you see?" "This," Jake pointed to a bright spot in the center of the model, right where a human's heart would be. "That's putting out enough energy to power a small city. The readings are off the charts. It's like she's got a star inside her chest." "Because she does," Dravik said simply. "Draconith biology is unlike anything else in the galaxy. We are living fusion reactors. Our bodies contain miniature suns, burning at the core of our being. That is what powers us, what gives us our strength and our long lives." Jake's mind reeled. "You're walking nuclear reactors?" "In a manner of speaking, yes. The energy from our core flows outward through crystalline pathways throughout our bodies." Dravik gestured to the branching patterns visible in the scan. "Like circuits in one of your machines. These pathways distribute power to every part of us. They are not just biological, they are technological. Living technology grown within us." Jake leaned closer to the display, his mechanic's brain starting to piece things together. "So when you said your healers tried to fix the whole system at once?" "They attempted to stabilize her entire energy matrix," Dravik confirmed, his voice heavy with frustration. "They used every technique known to our people. Energy transfusions, matrix realignment, even attempting to restart her core. Nothing worked. She only grew worse." "That's because it's not one big problem," Jake said, excitement creeping into his voice despite the dire situation. "It's a cascade failure. Look here." He zoomed in on specific points in the crystalline pathways, highlighting them one by one. "These nodes, these junction points where the pathways connect, they're like circuit breakers in an electrical system." Dravik's eyes widened, his scales brightening slightly. "Explain." Jake pulled up another display showing the cascade in action. One node failed first, probably this one near her secondary spine. When it failed, all the energy that should have flowed through it got diverted to the neighboring nodes. But they weren't designed to handle that much power. So they overloaded and failed too. Then those failures pushed even more energy to the next set of nodes and they failed. Each failure makes the next one worse, faster. It's a chain reaction. "Our healers said her matrix was collapsing uniformly," Dravik said slowly. "They treated it as one cohesive failure. But it's not. They were treating the symptom, not the source. The crystallization, that's just what happens when the nodes fail and the energy has nowhere to go. It crystallizes the surrounding tissue." Jake ran his hand through his hair, mind racing. "Your healers were trying to stop the whole collapse at once. That's like trying to catch a falling building. You can't. But if you could go back and fix each support beam that broke, working backward through the failure, you could stop the collapse," Dravik finished, his voice filled with something Jake hadn't heard before. "Oh. Can you do this? Can you stop it?" Jake stared at the scans for a long moment. "In theory? Yeah. I need to reset each node manually, working backward through the cascade. Find the first failure point and work forward, fixing each one before moving to the next. It's like resetting circuit breakers after a power surge." "Then do it," Dravik said immediately. "Whatever you need, I will provide it." "There's a problem," Jake said quietly. "A big one." Dravik's scales dimmed again. "Name it." "The nodes are microscopic. I can see them on the scan, but they're tiny, buried deep inside her body. I can't just reach in and fix them by hand. Jake pulled up another display showing the internal temperature readings. And the temperatures inside her body, near her core, they're hitting over 2000 degrees. That's hot enough to melt most metals we use. What do you need? Dravik asked. I'd need to send nanobots in, tiny robots that can navigate through her body and reach the failed nodes. But here's the problem, nothing we have can survive that kind of heat. Our nanobots would melt before they got anywhere close to her core. Jake zoomed in on the pathways leading to the central fusion point. And even if I could build nanobots that could survive, someone would need to guide them in real time. The pathways are too complex to pre-program a route. One wrong turn and the nanobot could cause more damage. You would need to control them directly, Dravik said. Through a neural link, yeah. Which means whoever does it would experience feedback from the heat, the energy, everything the nanobots encounter. Jake looked up at Dravik. And there's one more thing. What? The number of nodes that need to be reset. I count at least 200 major failure points, probably more smaller ones I can't see clearly on these scans. Each one needs to be carefully reset, the energy flow stabilized before moving to the next. Dravik's scales flickered with fading hope. How long would that take? Jake did the math in his head, factoring in navigation time, reset procedures, and the sheer number of nodes. At least 16 hours of continuous work. Probably closer to 20 if we run into complications. And we will run into complications. The dragon slumped, his massive form seeming to shrink. Impossible. No one could survive that long in neural link with that heat. It would kill them. Jake stared at the scans, at Serina's failing body, at Dravik's broken expression. His mind was already racing, thinking about heat-resistant alloys, modified nanobots, cooling systems. Thinking about how to turn impossible into possible. Impossible just means nobody's done it yet, Jake said quietly. He grabbed his tablet and started making notes frantically. I need to make some calls. Within an hour of Jake making his calls, the small repair bay had transformed into something that looked like a cross between a medical clinic and a mad scientist's laboratory. Tom Richards, a mining engineer from the lower decks, had arrived with a cart full of heat-resistant alloys that normally got used for drilling near planetary cores. Beth Cooper from the medical bay showed up with her entire stock of nanobots and monitoring equipment. Lisa Grant, a retired xenobiologist who'd been spending her days tending a garden on the station, came back to work with 20 years of alien physiology data stored in her old tablet. They worked like a machine, each person knowing exactly what needed to be done without being told. That was the thing about humans, they were at their best when things looked impossible. You're all crazy for helping with this, Jake muttered as he watched Tom retrofit the nanobots with heat shielding. Tom grinned, not looking up from his delicate work. Hey, you're the one trying to perform surgery on a dragon from the inside. We're just the supporting cast in your insane plan. Beth was setting up monitoring equipment around a makeshift medical chair they'd built for Jake. Vitals monitoring is ready. I've got cooling packs, stimulants, and enough adrenaline shots to wake up a dead elephant. If your heart stops, we'll start it again. Comforting, Jake said dryly. Lisa was studying Serina's scans, comparing them to data from dozens of other species. Jake, look at this. Her energy patterns have similarities to Earth's electric eels and some deep-sea creatures that live near thermal vents. If we can use those biological principles to create safe pathways for the nanobots, we might be able to reduce the heat feedback, Jake said, understanding immediately. Beth, can your scanners track energy flows in real time? Not alien energy like this, Beth admitted. But if we combine my medical scanners with Tom's industrial sensors and write some custom code to bridge them. They worked through the night. 30 straight hours of welding, coding, testing, and rebuilding. The Neuralink chair looked like something from a nightmare, covered in wires, cooling tubes, and medical monitors. But it would work. It had to work. Jake stood before it now, holding the neural headset in his hands. The modified nanobots were loaded and ready. Every system was green. Everything was in place except for one final problem that everyone was trying not to talk about. Someone needs to link with the nanobots and guide them manually, Jake said quietly. The heat feedback is going to be intense. Possibly fatal. The room went silent. Everyone knew what he was saying. Jake picked up the neural headset and started securing it to his head. I'll do it. Absolutely not. Dravik's roar shook the entire bay, rattling tools on the walls. The dragon's scales flashed bright red with fury and fear. You will die, human. I will not allow you to sacrifice yourself for us. Jake kept adjusting the headset, checking each connection point. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I'm not letting Serena die because I was too scared to try. This is madness. Dravik's voice cracked. Your species lives such short lives already, barely a century. You would throw away your precious years for a stranger? Which is exactly why we don't waste time calculating acceptable losses. Jake's voice was firm, steady. He looked Dravik directly in the eyes. We figure out how to survive while we help. That's what humans do. We don't save people because it's safe or logical. We do it because it's right. Beth stepped forward, placing herself between Jake and Dravik. Jake won't be alone. We'll monitor every vital sign, manage the heat feedback, regulate his body temperature, and keep him alive. We've got cooling systems, stimulants, backup medical procedures, and backup plans for our backup plans. Tom activated his monitoring station, screens flickering to life. Every human on this station is watching the feeds, Jake. We've got engineers on standby, doctors ready to assist, and about 50 people ready to jump in if we need them. You're not dying on our watch. Lisa placed a hand on Jake's shoulder, squeezing gently. 16 hours. We've got you. However long it takes, we're not leaving. Jake looked at each of his friends, then at Serena's still form on the platform, her scales flickering weaker than before. Finally, he met Dravik's anguished expression. Let's bring her back, Jake said. He sat down in the chair. Beth attached the medical monitors while Tom did final checks on the nanobot systems. Lisa pulled up the pathway maps on the main screen. Everyone moved with practiced precision, no wasted movements, no hesitation. Neural link ready, Tom announced. Medical systems green, Beth confirmed. Pathway maps loaded, Lisa said. Jake took a deep breath. Activate the link. The neural link activated, and Jake's world exploded into pure sensation. The incredible, impossible heat that felt like someone had set his brain on fire. His body convulsed in the chair, but the restraints held him steady. Through the connection, his consciousness expanded beyond his body and into something completely alien. He could see Serena's internal energy pathways spread out before him like a map made of light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Crystalline channels glowed like roads paved with stars, branching and connecting in patterns too complex for the human eye to fully comprehend. Energy flowed through them like rivers of liquid light, brilliant and alive. But darkness was spreading through the network. The cascade failure looked like corruption, like black oil seeping through the crystalline pathways, choking them, killing them. Jake could see the failed nodes, dark spots where the light had gone out, and the cascade spreading outward from each one. First node located, Jake gasped, his voice barely recognizable. Every word felt like pushing through molten glass. Going in. The nanobots moved through Serena's body, and Jake's consciousness moved with them. He could feel everything they felt. Every surge of energy, every degree of heat, every microscopic movement. The temperature was overwhelming, pressing against his mind like a physical weight trying to crush him. Jake's heart rate is spiking. Beth's voice cut through the haze. 140 and climbing. Cooling systems to maximum, Tom's response was immediate. Cold flooded through the tubes connected to Jake's body, but it felt like trying to cool lava with ice cubes. The heat inside Serena's body was beyond anything they'd prepared for. Jake pushed forward anyway, guiding the nanobots toward the first failed node. Serena's consciousness returned slowly, like surfacing from the bottom of a deep, dark ocean. For a moment she didn't know where she was or even who she was. Everything felt distant, muffled, like she was wrapped in layers of heavy fabric. Then sensation began to return bit by bit. The first thing she noticed was the absence of pain. For weeks, maybe months, she couldn't remember anymore. Pain had been her constant companion. The crushing, burning agony of her energy matrix tearing itself apart from the inside. It had felt like her very soul was being shredded, piece by piece. She'd felt each node fail, felt the cascade spreading through her body like ice-cold fire. Toward the end she'd stopped fighting it. She'd been ready for the darkness to take her, ready to become the living stone that the healers had warned about. Instead she felt whole. Complete. The energy flowed through her pathways like it was supposed to, smooth and strong and alive. Serena. Dravik's voice, rough and broken with relief. She turned her head slowly, her muscles weak from disuse. Dravik's face filled her vision, his massive features twisted with emotion she'd never seen from him before. His scales were wet. He was crying, something Draconith rarely did. Dravik, she whispered, her voice coming out weaker than she expected but steady. What happened? Where are we? Beyond her mate, she could see strange metal walls covered in equipment she didn't recognize. The space was cramped by Draconith standards, clearly built for smaller beings. And those smaller beings, humans, she realized, were rushing around frantically on the other side of the room. They moved with urgent purpose, their voices calling out medical terms and status updates. Dravik helped her sit up carefully, supporting her weight. "We are on a human orbital station. You were dying, Serena. The cascade crystallization, it was hours from completing. Our healers could do nothing." His voice caught. "So I brought you here." To him. To who? A human mechanic named Jake Miller. "He saw what our healers could not. He fixed you node by node from the inside of your body." Dravik's scales shimmered with emotions Serena had never seen him display, humility and awe mixed with lingering fear. But the cost. Serena followed Dravik's gaze to where the humans were clustered around one of their own. A male human lay motionless on a medical chair, his body covered in monitoring equipment and cooling tubes. Even from across the room, Serena could see the damage with her energy-sensitive vision. Burns across his neural pathways, visible as dark scars in his life force. His energy signature was flickering weakly, like a candle struggling in the wind. "He did this?" Serena asked, horror and gratitude washing over her in equal measure. "For me? A complete stranger?" "For 18 hours he guided nanobots through your body while linked to them neurally. He felt every degree of heat, every surge of energy." Dravik's voice dropped to barely a whisper. His heart stopped twice. "They revived him and he continued working. He would not quit until you were saved." Serena stared at the unconscious human, trying to comprehend it. "But why? We are nothing to each other. We had never met. Why would he sacrifice himself?" "Because humans do not calculate worth before offering help," Dravik said softly, and Serena could hear the shame in his voice. "They do not ask what they will gain. They do not consider the cost to themselves first. They simply help because someone needs help. I am learning that we Draconith, for all our power and knowledge, have been wrong about many things. We have been wrong about what true strength means." Over the next 3 days, Serena regained her strength while Jake fought for his life in the medical bay. The small repair station transformed into something unprecedented. More Draconith ships arrived, word spreading quickly through their communication networks about what had happened. Healers came not to treat one of their own, but to study what the human had done. They examined the scans, reviewed the procedure, and stood in silent awe at the simple brilliance of it. More humans arrived too, coming from other parts of the station and even other stations nearby. They came to check on Jake, to meet the dragons their friend had saved, to see history being made. The bay became crowded with two species that had barely interacted before, now working side by side. Draconith healers shared their knowledge of energy matrices and biological systems. Human doctors explained their techniques for treating cascade failures in mechanical systems. Engineers from both species collaborated on new medical equipment that combined the best of both approaches. It was chaotic and messy and absolutely beautiful. Serena spent those 3 days learning about humans. She talked to Beth, who explained how their team had kept Jake alive against impossible odds. She listened to Tom describe how humans approached problems differently than any species he'd encountered in his mining work across the galaxy. Lisa shared stories of human history, of countless times when humans had risked everything to help others, even strangers, even enemies. "It's just what we do," Beth had said with a shrug, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. When Jake finally woke on the 4th day, Serena was there. His repair bay had been completely transformed. Draconith biomonitoring equipment interfaced seamlessly with human medical scanners. Crystal matrices stored data alongside human computer systems. Two species, two completely different approaches to technology and life, working together as if they'd always meant to. Jake's eyes fluttered open slowly. Beth was at his side immediately, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. "Hey," Jake's voice came out as a rough croak. "Did it work?" Beth laughed, and Serena could hear the tears in it. "You incredible idiot." "Yes, it worked." Serena moved into Jake's view, her scales glowing with health and gratitude. Even in his weakened state, Jake's eyes widened. "You're okay," he whispered and smiled. "Jake Miller," Serena's voice resonated through the bay, drawing everyone's attention. "You gave your life force to save mine. Such an act deserves recognition beyond simple words." She moved closer to where Jake sat, still weak but alert. Dravik stood beside her, both dragons having to duck slightly to fit comfortably in the human-sized space. The other humans in the bay had fallen silent, sensing something important was about to happen. "Among the Draconith, there is a sacred ritual," Serena continued, her scales pulsing with soft light. "We can share memories, our most precious moments, with those we deem worthy of the highest honor. It is something we reserve only for the greatest heroes of our people, those who have proven themselves beyond any doubt. She extended her massive clawed hand toward Jake. I wish to share my memories with you if you will accept, so you can understand what you have truly saved. Jake looked at Dravik, who nodded encouragingly, his scales shimmering with approval. Beth stood nearby, ready to intervene if needed, but she made no move to stop it. Yeah, Jake said, his voice still hoarse. Okay. Serena placed her hand gently on Jake's head. Her scales were warm, almost hot, but not uncomfortably so. Then light flowed between them, brilliant and blinding, and Jake's consciousness expanded beyond anything he'd ever experienced. Suddenly he wasn't in the repair bay anymore. He was flying above a world of impossible beauty. Crystal cities floated in the sky, held aloft by energy fields that hummed with power. Rivers of pure light flowed through valleys below, and the sky itself seemed to shimmer with colors that didn't exist in human language. This was the Draconith homeworld, and Jake was seeing it through Serena's eyes, experiencing her memories as if they were his own. The scene shifted, and Jake felt himself on a battlefield. Not flying above it, but in it, fighting with strength and power he'd never known. Beside him fought another Draconith warrior, scales flashing with determination and fierce joy. Dravik. This was their first meeting, centuries ago, during what Serena's memories told him was their civilization's darkest war. An enemy that threatened to extinguish their entire species. Jake felt what Serena had felt in that moment when she and Dravik fought side by side for the first time. Recognition. Connection. Something deeper than words could express. It wasn't like human love, not exactly. It was more fundamental than that, like finding a piece of yourself you never knew was missing. Then came the bonding ceremony, and Jake's human mind struggled to comprehend what he was experiencing. For Draconith, mates weren't just partners or spouses in the human sense. They were two halves of one energy pattern, their very souls becoming entangled at a quantum level. After bonding, they literally shared energy, their cores syncing together. One could feel what the other felt, know what the other knew. To lose your mate wasn't just losing someone you loved. It was losing half of your own soul, becoming fundamentally incomplete. Jake experienced centuries of their life together, compressed into moments. Victories and defeats, joy and sorrow, quiet moments of peace and terrifying battles. Through it all, that constant connection between Serena and Dravik, an unbreakable bond that defined who they were. Then came the illness. Jake felt Serena's terror as her first node failed. Felt Dravik's growing desperation as healer after healer failed to help. He experienced Dravik's anguish as he made the impossible decision to seek help from another species, something no proud Draconith had done in living memory. The dragon had crossed 3 star systems, abandoned every bit of his pride, and begged an unknown human for help because the alternative was losing half of his soul and watching it remain trapped in living stone for eternity. The memories faded, and Jake gasped, finding himself back in his own body in the repair bay. Tears streamed down his face. His hands were shaking. I understand now, he whispered. I understand what you are to each other. What I saved wasn't just a life. It was everything. Serena stepped back, her own eyes glistening with emotion. Now you know why we are forever in your debt, Jake Miller. You saved not just my life, but both of our souls. The bay had filled with people while Jake was experiencing the memories. Humans and Draconith crowded together, watching. Word had spread through the station that something important was happening. At least 50 beings from both species stood in silence, waiting. Dravik moved to the center of the space, drawing every eye. His presence commanded attention, but something was different about him now. His scales displayed colors Jake had learned meant humility, something humans had never seen from a Draconith before. For millennia, we Draconith have considered ourselves superior. Dravik's voice carried to every corner of the bay, deep and resonant. We mastered the stars while other species still crawled from their home worlds. We perfected biological technology while others struggled with simple metal and circuits. We lived for centuries while others died in decades. We stood alone in our pride, believing we needed no one. The dragon's scales shifted through complex patterns, displaying emotions that humans were only beginning to understand. Shame. Revelation. Regret. We were wrong. The words hung in the air like thunder. Murmurs spread through the crowd, Draconith and humans alike shocked by the admission. These humans, Dravik continued, gesturing toward Jake and his team, young by galactic standards, considered unremarkable by most advanced species, succeeded where all our ancient knowledge and power failed. Not because they had better technology. Not because they were stronger or lived longer or had more resources.